Welcome back to Grade 7 History, Unit Number 1, New France and British North America, 1713 to 1800. This is Lesson Number 11. What challenges did the Loyalists face in their new land? Before we begin today's lesson, let's consider the following. What challenges might the Loyalists have faced when they arrived in British North America? So before you go any further, you're going to put the video on pause so that you can jot down some ideas that you might have in response to this question, and then it'll be interesting as you watch the video to see how many things you correctly predicted. So put the video on pause right now. All right, let's proceed. The thousands of Loyalists who came to British North America brought with them hopes for a better life. Many had left everything behind on the promise of good farmland and political freedom. However, after arriving, they would soon face many unexpected challenges. The journey to British North America was long and tiring. Ships were overcrowded and many people fell ill. The British government had to act quickly to divide land in British North America into lots before it could be given to the arriving Loyalists. When they arrived, the settlers found that the land was empty and they had to build their own homes and farms. Once the Loyalists arrived, they could petition or request one or more plots of land. They would often divide the land they received amongst themselves by holding a lottery, drawing names out of a hat. This was an ineffective system, and while some Loyalists had large plots of land, some Loyalists received very little land. And just to clarify what I just read, here's an image showing the lottery system in place. And you've got one person here who's taking names out of a hat while a group of Loyalists are all waiting anxiously to see what kind of plot of land they're about to receive. And the question I have for you is, how do you think the Loyalists felt while waiting to randomly choose a plot of land? We'll take a bit of time to talk about this tomorrow. Along with land, Loyalists were given free supplies such as farm tools, food, and clothing. In return, they were expected to clear and farm a set amount of their land within a given time period. If they did not meet their deadline, they had to give the land back. The problem was, a number of Loyalists had to wait years to receive their land, and they were not given an extended deadline to set up their farms. The land which the Loyalists received was wild, with great forests that extended to the edge of the river. Loyalists had to cut down trees, remove tree roots, turn the soil, and build homes. They had no machines to do all of this work. It was critical to have homes and warm shelters built in order to survive the first harsh winter. For most of the Loyalists, their hard work paid off. Many present-day towns across Southern Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island were built by the Loyalists. However, the promise of a better life for all Loyalists did not come true. And here you can see from this map that there were a number of routes which the Loyalists took. Now, like it was mentioned in our last video, not all Loyalists moved to British North America. There were a number who moved to the West Indies or to Britain. But at least half of the Loyalists all headed north, whether it be taking a straight route, uh, going northeast, some of them taking almost a complete circle in order to reach their destination. Whenever British subjects lost property due to a war, the British government would compensate or pay back a portion of their losses. Many Loyalists thought that they would receive government money to pay back the loss of their property in the old 13 colonies. While they petitioned the government, the money was slow in coming. Some, like the Black Loyalists, never received compensation. And here's a political cartoon from the time. How do you think Loyalists who received little or no compensation felt when they saw cartoons like this one that made Britain look kind and generous? Put the video on pause, take a moment to consider this because we'll talk about it tomorrow. The majority of Black Loyalists settled in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. However, they received little or no government support. They received land that was of very poor quality or no land at all. In 1773, a group of Black Loyalists formed the community of Birchtown. Since there were so many settlers, food and shelter became scarce. Many were forced to become indentured servants, which was a temporary form of slavery, in exchange for some money in hopes that they could one day purchase some land and build a home. And Birchtown still exists today, a very beautiful community. And we'll be talking a little bit more about Birchtown and certainly a fair degree more about Black Loyalists in future lessons. Black Loyalists also faced racial discrimination. They were not allowed to vote or to have a jury trial. If arrested, they faced whippings or being returned to slavery. There were even laws which prohibited them from dancing or having social gatherings. Despite these brutal conditions, Birchtown became the largest black settlement in North America. Black Loyalists were skilled workers who found jobs as shoemakers, carpenters, teachers, and ministers. Some enslaved people escaped the U.S. via the Underground Railway and found refuge in Birchtown. Just looking at the portrait on the left. Boston King was one of the founders of Birchtown. He and his wife left Birchtown and moved to Sierra Leone after facing so much racist mistreatment. Despite his departure, he still inspired other black people to work hard and make a successful life for themselves in Nova Scotia. Prince Edward Island was mapped out in 1764. The land in PEI was given to 17 friends of the British Crown who agreed to settle the land. Almost all of these quote unquote absentee landlords lived in Britain and never visited PEI. They managed the land badly. While they charged high rent to the Loyalists, the land was not prepared for settlers and was unsuitable for farming. The Loyalists went ahead and cleared the land, building roads, homes, and farms. However, it would take over 100 years for the Loyalists to finally be given ownership of the land which they had worked so hard to develop. And this is the very first map of PEI, and it was drawn by a man named Samuel Holland. The town of Shelburne was originally an isolated area of land in Nova Scotia. This changed when masses of Loyalists moved to the area. There were over 10,000 Loyalists living in the area, although there was not nearly enough land for everyone. The British government had set aside much of the land for the British Crown, military, and navy. In 1787, the British government stopped giving aid to the Shelburne Loyalists, which resulted in two-thirds of the settlers leaving. Despite this, there are still many heritage buildings in Shelburne that were built by the Loyalists who tried to make a new life in the town. And Cooper's Inn, which you see on the left, is one of several heritage buildings in Nova Scotia that date back to the Loyalist migration. So my question for you is, why is it important to protect historical buildings such as Cooper's Inn? Think about it for a minute, because Of course, we'll talk about it in tomorrow's class. All right, let's finish today's lesson by discussing the following. Well, we'll do the discussion in tomorrow's class. Number one, which loyalists had the best experience in British North America? Which loyalists found that their lives stayed the same or got worse after the American Revolution? And number two, imagine you are an Acadian farmer who is able to find a new home in Quebec. How would you feel if you knew that a loyalist was given your old home? Because as you'll recall, when we talked about the Acadian expulsion, we learned that after Acadians were kicked out, a number of farms and homes were actually kept intact and left for British people to move into. So again, imagine you're an Acadian farmer, you're living in Quebec, and you hear that a loyalist, someone who's loyal to Britain, moves into what used to be your home. Okay, so what you're going to do is put the video on pause so that you can write down your responses to these two questions. If you don't feel confident in doing this, it means you need to go back and watch this video at least 2 more times. Then when you're ready, put the video on pause. All right, I look forward to hearing everybody's responses to all of the questions which have been posed throughout this video. But until our next class, this does conclude today's video.